Hello and welcome to Normal Islands Live. I'm Curtis Daly and I'm really excited to have back on Damien Willey. Damien, how are you?
I'm lovely, mate. I'm feeling grand. How are you, mate?
I'm very well. We were saying backstage, I love your new background, but you might be getting some upgrades soon, I hear.
I might be getting rid of the virtual background before long, and I know a lot of people will be quite happy to see the end of the green haze around my head. But we a little bit of painting and decorating, a little bit of moving around. In the none too distant future, we might have a bit of a different demo on our hands.
You
Sort
kind
of.
of look like, The Simpsons and that, was that alien says, I come to bring love, and it's got that glow around it. Of course, this is Britain though, so it's like, you bring love and hope, kill it.
Yes.
So,
Especially if it
uh,
comes green. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a bit, though, won't us?
well, we will. That's a very good
It's
what do
almost
you
a
call it?
perfect segue, wasn't it?
Segue. That's it. Like a
Segue.
segue.
Mm.
Even though we're covering that at the end of the show, this is what we will be discussing tonight. So we're going to be talking about a recent article from Tony Blair claiming the left has an unholy alliance with Islamism. Israel passes racist death penalty legislation only for Palestinians, and as Damien alludes to, we'll discuss the Zionism is racism motion again, as I guess Damien was present. So I think it'd be good to get his insights. Now, you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work or by becoming a YouTube member. First story, another rare intervention from Tony Blair. This time he has claims that the left has an unholy alliance with Islamists. Blair wrote this in the Sunday Times. The left-wing version is a pernicious and novel development in progressive politics. The alliance with Islamists. In its opposition to Israel, it has found an animating cause, as he says, and the war in Gaza has allowed it full rein in pursuing it. Parts of the left cast the Jewish community as supporters of the government of Israel, and Jews become fair game. Of course, progressive politicians rightly say being against government policy in Israel is not the same as being against Jews. Well, he just contradicted himself because the left always separates Jewish people and the state of Israel, yet those who attack the left make that conflation, which is also what Blair just did in that very paragraph. Now, Blair continues with his Hasbro talking points. You should not diminish the charge of genocide, whatever your views of Israel's actions, by a bar particularly aimed at Jewish memories of the Holocaust, which was a genocide. And it was disingenuous to call for Israel to end the war without accepting what is undoubtedly true, which is that the war would have ended at any point in time if Hamas had said they were releasing the hostages, withdrawing from the government of Gaza directly or indirectly through their weapons, and accepting the united position of the international community that a Palestinian state must be achieved through negotiation, not violence. I mean, he can't be serious here. First of all, Hamas gave up all the hostages. And that was the talking point we heard. As long as Hamas gives up the hostages, the war will end. They did that. And what's happening? The genocide continues. And then he's now sort of moving the goalposts. Right, okay, they've given up their hostages, but now they have to relinquish any form of governance. Well, Hamas are the only resistance group at the moment. So why should they give up their governance or even their weapons just so Israel can go in and finish the job? What he's saying is the war will end completely on Israel's terms. Absolutely insane. Now, if you want to have a laugh, you can read the entire article. But what you won't find is any evidence of the left in bed with Islamism. Nowhere in that article does he do that. The article's premise is simply because the left opposes Israel, we are just Islamists. Damien, what is this obsession from the right wing that accuse the left of Islamism?
Oh, honestly, if Blair's all too rare interventions became any more common, he might as well just become the chief spokesperson for Hey Dodgers Anonymous by this point and be done with it. What he's done here is he's basically running containment for Israel and being his typical dishonest self when he's at it. He can feel the public anger at Israel moving beyond the limits of the state. And the state used to be able to cover all of this effectively before we all became a lot more wise to what's actually going on out there in Israel and the Middle East. So to coin the words of a very famous movie, I suppose, he needs a bigger smear. And so spraying the word Islamism around like a garden hose, he hopes he'll do something of the job for him. But it's typically slimy and dishonest, as things associated with Blair usually are, isn't it? Because it takes a mass political reaction to slaughter and siege and dispossession and violence and all of the, everything we've observed, this genocide over 2.5 years of Gaza now, that's now spreading beyond that across the Middle East. And he tries to turn it into something sinister and not to be trusted. He's not making an argument here because he hopes functionally he won't have to. He thinks he's such a great salesman that he can sell this pitch to us and we won't believe what our eyes and ears are telling us. But as you made the point of a moment ago, he's sort of tripped up over his own arrogance here by contradicting himself at the same time, because he says, yes, criticism of Israel is not the same as hostility to Jews, but then spends the rest of the article, treating opposition to Israel as meaning Jews have become fair game. So the distinction exists just long enough for him to claim that he's recognized it, and then he immediately treads all over it as if it doesn't make any difference to him, when it doesn't make any difference to the right, because the left are the ones that have spent years making the distinction, as you rightly said as well. Jewish people are not the state of Israel, and no state gets a blood-soaked exemption from criticism by wrapping itself in an entire faith or an ethnicity. It's Blair and his sort who keep dragging that conflation back to the table because it's all they can desperately cling to. So if we're going to, I suppose, ask why this obsession with accusing the left of Islamism, it's because the right are losing the moral argument and they know it. They cannot morally stabilize Israel's conduct over Gaza, or now with relation to the likes of Lebanon or Iran. They can't politically contain the scale of the public disgust that more and more of us feel. They can't admit the millions of people object to this because they have functioning eyes and ears and something that Tony Blair definitely doesn't have, which is a conscience. So instead, what they're attempting to do here is turn solidarity, bearing in mind this used to be the Labour leader, of course, and the Labour Party is supposedly built on solidarity and collectivism. But here he's trying to turn solidarity into extremism and into fanaticism, and Muslim political participation must become an object of suspicion at all times. So Islamism is just the latest cool smear word from that faction of politics for people like him, who need the public to stop looking at the crimes that Israel is actually committing and start fearing the people who are actually doing the condemning.
I mean, the left and Islamism, as he terms it, isn't like something Blair has come up himself. This is what we hear in right-wing circles. If you turn on Talk TV or GB News, it's this idea that the left are in bed with Islamists, and it's a walking contradiction. For example, the Together Alliance, that big protest, you had Zach Plansky on stage, and someone with promiscuous clothing, shall we say, and people saying, why isn't Mothin Ali there? Well, maybe he's uncomfortable. Zach Plansky's gay, he's Jewish. That's a walking contradiction. Of course, the Green Party has shown that it's not a contradiction. In fact, they've made a coalition, right? They've brought people together. But it's an obsession from the right wing to try and say the left are now Islamists. Of course, we would say it's simply because we're pro-Palestine. But this isn't just Tony Blair saying it. This is a talking point, shall we say, from the last couple of years.
Yeah, they wheel Tony Blair out as some sage voice representing their views because everybody looks up to Tony Blair. Newsflash, we bloody don't. And it just really just exposes them for who they are. Like you say, the Greens have built this coalition now. They brought people together, a broad church that Labour used to be until they told everybody, there's the door. You can use it if you don't like the way we run things. So you're basically in this situation here where you've got Blair mouthing off again, but it's all the same old talking points. It's that same thing with the right, that they need to give you a new boogeyman to fear. If this one's not working, if this excuse is no longer hitting home in the way that we used to like it, that we can't rely on the Murdoch scum to put out a piece and everybody automatically go, there's a wrong un, and therefore we must all believe that because it came in the Sun, therefore it must be true. That doesn't work anymore in this day and age, not with social media anymore. And I think this is what Tony Blair's never caught up with, because in his day, there was no social media as such. He got away with all the old usual tricks that certainly I grew up with through Thatcher and Major and into Blair after that. But you've got to, it's basically just make up the excuses, keep pushing the same old tired narrative that's 20 years old, no longer works in this day and age, and it no longer works. And they're scrabbling around desperately looking for something else that they can latch onto, that can say, they can say this is what's to blame. We see it so often anyway with migrants and migration and that kind of narrative, but this is specific now, that, oh no, we've got to look after Israel, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to oppose Muslims because Palestinians are mainly Muslim, and therefore this looks like a good way of separating the divide. Let's get people back onto Israel's side again. Let's get them hating Palestinians again, because that's used to work, but it doesn't anymore. And it's trying to get this sympathy back for Israel again that they just can't seem to grasp has been and gone. That's never going back in the box. We're never going to buy into that ever again. We've seen too much. Try again. I would argue that the Green Party polling is also indicative of the fact it's not working either.
Mm. I spoke to someone last week, a journalist, and she's Muslim, by the way, and she told me the anti-Muslim bigotry today is worse than the war on terror. She said, I distinctively remember how bad it was, obviously, since 2001. But she told me it's worse today. And I think someone like me who wasn't political, was born in 93, so can't exactly
Bless
say
you.
I'm aware. I mean, the only thing I remember from 2001 was the Spider-Man film coming out. That was the only thing I cared about. So, but no, she told me it's worse today. I think that's important. It's wild. Let's go on to our next story. It's not
Before
completely
you do that, I'll
removed.
just say I was born in
Go on.
'78. I can remember my earliest memories are sort of the Iran-Iraq war. But I think on that point that she's making, I think she's absolutely right, because way back when the newspapers did carry all the weight for the politicians who wanted to carry a given narrative, they certainly didn't have to work as hard at it. I think it's
Yeah,
worse
that's a good
now
point.
because there's more of it. It's constantly being pushed out because they're not. It doesn't hit home as strongly anymore. It's not as easy for them anymore. So I think they're having to work harder, and it looks worse as a result because functionally it is. There's more of it, more of that negativity towards Islam going around as a consequence of that. But equally, we should all be a little bit more woke, I suppose. The word to use, isn't it? It's not an insult. You should be proud to be woke. But we're a little bit more woke. We're aware of what they're doing. We can see through it. So it doesn't work as well either, even though it does appear, I would dare say, if I was a Muslim, I would think certainly it does look a lot more vicious to my mind. Yeah, I think it looks that way, but I don't think it has the same. I would like to think that's probably a better way to put it. Is I would like to think it doesn't hit home as hard as it does. Obviously, it's gonna get through to some people, but I would like to think sensible people who haven't been bloody lobotomized by mainstream media can see through it.
Yeah, well, we know that people are not in favor of the war in Iran, for example. They're not particularly pro-war. No one, no,
You don't have
Israel's
to be
not popular.
pro-Iran to be that either. You
We
can accept
don't.
that the Iranian regime is what it is, but they
Yeah.
didn't start this, and
Mm.
we can all say that too.
I think people are far less convinced by the political establishment. So that's definitely true. And again, Israel's not popular. You whole British people, they're not popular with that. I do want to go to our next story. It's still very much Israel, of course, and it's probably the main story of the evening. Actually, it's you've seen the headline of our show. It's a really truly repulsive story. So the Knesset has voted in favor of the death penalty just for Palestinians in the Israeli occupied West Bank who are convicted of deadly attacks or what Israel deems as an act of terrorism will be imposed upon without a request from prosecutors. The method will be by hanging within 90 days with a possible postponement of up to 180 days. Several European leaders have called out this new law, along with Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper. She said, we, the foreign ministers of Germany, France, Italy, and the United Kingdom, express our deep concern about a bill that would significantly expand the possibilities to impose the death penalty in Israel, and that could be voted into law next week. We are particularly worried about the de facto discriminatory character of the bill. The adoption of this bill would risk undermining Israel's commitments with regards to democratic principles. The death penalty is an inhumane, degrading form of punishment without any deterring effects. This is why we oppose the death penalty, whatever the circumstances around the world. The rejection of the death penalty is a fundamental value that unites us. We urge the Israeli decision makers in the Knesset and government to abandon these plans. What I find interesting about that quote is she's very much focused on the death penalty, but not the racist aspect. She does say a little line about, oh, it has a discriminatory character. It's not a discriminatory character. It's full-blown racist. It's not the death penalty for Israelis. It's the death penalty for Palestinians. So of course it's weak condemnation, but also in that, which I think absolutely repulsing, is that she says this undermines Israel's commitment to democracy. When have Israel ever committed to democracy? I mean, whilst condemning this particular act, she still finds a way to defend Israel, which I think is absolutely disgusting. This is such a horrible bill, and people should be, mainstream politicians should be questioning the entire apartheid regime. But no, they're going to speak about just the extremities of it. And again, Yvette Cooper drops a little line like, oh, don't worry, Israel loves democracy. Just this one very undemocratic thing. This is one very racist apartheid policy. So again, it's weak condemnations all around. And it's nothing about the racist apartheid notion that underpins all of it, which our politicians, including Cooper, won't condemn. But it was this video that disturbed many. Itamar, excuse me. But it was this video that disturbed many. Itamar Ben-Gvir, member of the Knesset, who served as Minister for National Security since 2022 and leader of the Otzma Yehudit Party, who heavily pushed the legislation, celebrating the bill passing.
השר, על מה כל החגיגה?
מוות למחבלים עבר היום, חוק מוות למחבלים, היסטוריה, היסטוריה. בעזרת השם בקרוב, אחד אחד להוציא להורג, כל אלה שטבחו ורצחו ושרפו, לחיים, לחיי עם ישראל.
It's yeah. I mean, I think I've seen it 3 times now, and I think I've almost become desensitized to it. But this is a man giving glasses of champagne around after a bill passes where Palestinians not only are targeted in terms of like the death penalty, but by hanging. Like there is, I was saying before the show, I'm not a believer in like good and evil. People are a product of their material conditions, of their environment. But you look at that, and someone like Ben-Gvir is just a monster through and through, who's doing depraved acts, but is also gleefully celebrating it. Now, before the vote passed, this is Ben-Gvir a couple of days ago showing a hanging room where, again, he was gleefully showing off where Palestinians would be killed.
השר, ראיתי שהאיראנים אומרים שאתה מת.
אני מת להוציא מחבלים להורג. עונש מוות למחבלים.
You can't claim you're the good guys when you build a room with a noose, ready for Palestinians, and say, oh, poor Israel, we're the biggest victims of all of this. Please send us all your aid and your money. Okay, America, I know you can't give your own citizens healthcare because you choose to spend it on the military, whilst us, who guarantees healthcare to their citizens, needs more money for a genocide. But, oh, we are so oppressed. Like, seriously, fuck you to the hill and back. Look, there are some things I would love to say about this man, but I could not say it publicly. I would be in trouble for what I would say. I'm sure you can probably guess what I'm thinking, though, about not just this particular man, by the way, because let's not forget, right? This is not just Ben-Gvir. This is everything downstream from an apartheid racist state, right? Netanyahu's evil. Smotrich is evil. Many other people are evil because it's not about individual evil people. Whilst I do really want to say how evil these people are, it is a system that enables this. And you can't just vote out a right-wing government like this or a far-right government. Like, by the way, Israeli society, deeply, deeply racist. I mean, just see some of the interviews, the things they say about Palestinians. You're not going to have a government in 5 years or 10 years time and then it's all suddenly nice and the apartheid ends. Like you cannot do that. The state of Israel must be demolished in the form it is. Damien, You've had many European leaders condemn this. Yvette Cooper has spoken out against this, but again, all words, no action.
Yeah. You know, for everything you just said about Israel, they used to take pride in the fact that they didn't have capital punishment. The last person who was actually hung in Israel was in 1962. So that just goes to show how far the society has actually descended, even from the low bar they already operated at. You know, it even had, you know, back that far in a sort of around the time of the 6 Day War and, you know, just prior to that, in fact. But that's how it's, you know, we're going back over 50 years since they had capital punishment full stop. They used to celebrate the fact that they were a moderate and progressive country because they didn't have it. And now they have this. And the only reason they actually have this is because it was a bargaining chip that Ben-Gvir brought to the table in exchange with Netanyahu to get to be able to go his coalition together. It's something that Netanyahu's been stalling for some time and can't stall any longer. Ben-Gvir desperate to have this. But as you said, European leaders is the focus of the question. They know this is aimed at Palestinians. They know it all sits inside an apartheid system where one population lives under one legal order and another under a harsher one built around military domination. They know all of that because they've said enough of it themselves. Yvette Cooper and those other European foreign ministers and that letter you just showed up called the bill discriminatory, which is pathetic. That's the word they used, that it would undermine democratic principles. They urged Israel to abandon it. But all that letter came out before the bill passed. And what happened after the bill passed? Jack shit. They've said fuck all. So those statements were a fraud. They haven't been backed up. Some politicians have, however. Green Party Deputy Leader Motien Ali has called for the suspension of the Israeli charge d'affaires because we still don't have an actual in-place Israeli ambassador in the UK right now. That's the person in charge. That's the current senior diplomat. But he's also called for the cessation of arms sales and for sanctions to be imposed on Israel as well. And Yvette Cooper and Team Keith, they've gone AWOL. They're hiding behind the sofa or staring at their feet. You know, there is leadership in this country. Some people are saying the right things. Unfortunately, as per usual, it's never the ones who are actually in power. But this is also why Ben-Gvir behaves like a man with nothing to fear, why he can celebrate and fears no repercussion, why he can be that appalling, that sick, that he can point out that room to that noose and puff his chest out with pride, because he's learnt, quite correctly, that the people who claim to be horrified by him are still not prepared to do anything serious about him. And so he celebrates and he grandstands and he performs this cruelty in public. He swills champagne in celebrations while wearing a noose-shaped pin on his lapel, which is one of the sickest symbols I think I've ever seen. And he shows off all the logic of the system with that smug little certainty that he always comes along with, from knowing the consequences are always going to fall on Palestinians, never for him, never for the people writing the laws or enforcing them or cheering them on or shielding them from abroad, like the Labour Friends of Israel or the Tory Friends of Israel or the Reform Friends of Israel or the Board of Deputies or however many more of these poxy organisations we have in this country that kiss Israeli boots. He's grotesque, but he's not, as you say, an exception to the state. He's just one of the more honest representatives, really, because he says what he says, and he says it with a grin on his face, while others may not be prepared to be so blatant and so honest about it. So while you've got these European leaders condemning this bill, they continue to protect the state that produced it nonetheless. They condemn the smell while continuing to feed the rot. It's not just about one law here. It's about the entire regime underneath it. It's about the entire bedrock that the Israeli state has been built on, illegal and stolen as it is. You know, it's a regime built on differential rights, on differential freedom, on differential safety, on different levels of humanity. Apartheid, as that is. All the weasel words in the world of these supposed leaders are to try and pacify us, frankly. They're meant to create this impression of being distanced from this law while their policy towards Israel remains exactly where it was before the bill even passed. So the only lesson they're actually teaching anybody is a lesson to Israel, in that they can keep going and keep doing what they're doing because they're not prepared to stop you.
First Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, he said, this is a quote, he said, until, well, he says Jews, but Israelis are Jews, until Israelis are hung for the killing of Arabs, the killing won't stop. That's what he said. So to mention how, of course, Israel started on apartheid, right? It's never had a start on a good footing, but it's got so much worse that the first prime minister of Israel is literally saying, unless the death penalty is used for Israelis, the regime is going to continue. Now, bear in mind, this person, Ben Gurion, would be, as Aaron Bassani said, kicked out the Labour Party for that, for anti-Semitism. And that's the first prime minister of Israel. So you can see how far the decline, right, even from the Nakba, it's not exactly from a high point, is it? Very low point from the Nakba. It's got even worse today.
Yeah, it is. They're not starting from a very high bar at all, but this is how far they are descending now. Again, I'll come back to this day and age, this social media, no longer reliant on those old forms of media. It's going to become even harder and harder for them to try and win this con over again, to try and convince us that we should all feel sorry for Israel, that we need to pity Israel, when we can see perfectly well what they're doing. We see it every single day across our mobile phones. We see it every day across various social media platforms and Telegram channels and what have you else you might be subscribed to. Every single day, it just gets worse and worse. And this is, I'm not surprised we've got to this point, that they celebrate and they cheer a death penalty now. And these military courts, in these cases that would end in a certain death sentence now, that this is the mandatory sentence now. No pardon available either, it has to be said too. There's no appeal or anything like that. 99.7% or something like that of these cases result in a guilty verdict, because the courts are stacked against Palestinians anyway. It's an Israeli court trying a Palestinian person. Now, as I understand it, there have been a petition gone into the Supreme Court in Israel now to try and declare this law null and void on the basis that Israel simply can't legally do what it's doing. But I'm also reminded to say that, well, hang on a minute, when has Israel ever stopped from doing what it's not allowed to flaming do? Because international law never applies to them, never gets enforced against them. Anytime it's attempted, the US will protect them. And I can quite conceivably see that happening again, should this appeal get off the ground within the Supreme Court. But Israel as a state is only going to get worse. And if it takes the West Bank and it takes Gaza and all the rest of it that it's trying to do, it's now moving into Lebanon and wants to seize control of all the land south of the Litani River there. And you're just looking at all of this and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, this is Greater Israel now panning out again. What's going to stop them? You know, it's death penalties today. It's going to be full regional conquest tomorrow, is it? Because what else is there left for them? There's always something else. There's always something more that this society of theirs wants. There's always something more they have to do in the name of their own security, because they feel unsafe, because they're in danger, and because we're all supposed to feel sorry for them. What else can they hasbara into being to take forward beyond this point now? Because this is never going to be the end, because it never ends up seeming to be enough for them, does it?
And what Cooper said in her statement, though, like she got on a defense of Israel, right, saying that they're committed to democracy. I mean, that's mad too. I mean, even when this depraved bill gets passed, right, they still can't fully admit what Israel as an entity is. I mean, that's completely mad, isn't it, from Cooper?
Of course it is, but it's what you expect from a Labour friend of Israel. I mean, why? I mean, hang on, we've got a state here that's passing one of the most vicious forms of a death penalty on the planet here, and it's completely one-sided. It's Palestinians only. Israelis will never get tried under the same system. Completely separate civilian court system just for Israelis. All Palestinians get tried in a military court. So this is completely racist, completely divisive, complete apartheid. It's blatantly so. It's worse than anything South Africa did during the worst excesses of their apartheid. But they can't call it out. Cooper's statement that you read out came out before the bill passed. There has been no statement from this government, even now, from Starmer, from Cooper, from any of the rest of them, condemning Israel for passing this bill. They've all gone into fucking hiding. Well, where the hell is our leadership here? We wouldn't have a death penalty in this country. Starmer's a human rights lawyer, for Christ's sake. Where the hell is his sense of human rights gone again? Or did it really only extend as far as his pay packet back in the day? Because I'm a firm believer of that. You know, where are they? Why are you hiding? Why have none of you passed comment on this yet? Why have none of you condemned Israel for passing this law? Because surely it's a no-brainer. Or are you that worried about your donations from God knows who that you don't stay boo to a goose over it. In which case, who are you running this country in the interest for?
I almost think he regrets being a human rights lawyer. So, because we always bring up, we say, you used to be a human rights lawyer. I think he regrets it. Yeah, I mean, the silence is absolutely deafening. Let's leave it there. Before, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Before we move on, it's 2026. Of course, we want this year to be massive for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year to really put us on the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio. You guys know that I've set up a sort of secondary thing here. So we've got a hybrid studio working anyway, but we'd also be like to pay for the work we do. Now, your support over the years has been amazing, and we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations. So if you want to be part of a media organization that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/supports. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for 99p. Thank you. Now, this isn't something we usually do, which is to recover a story we previously spoke about without updates. But since Damien is with us today, and the fact that he was present for the Zionism is Racism motion at the Green Party Spring Conference, I thought it made sense to, get some insight. So, Damien, tell me what went down. What was your experience like? A shit show, I heard it was.
That's certainly one way of putting it. It's one way it could be put, but there's also another side of it, because the main point was that motion of ours, Zionism is Racism, that motion that fantastic lady, Lubna Spaitan, has put together and brought so many of us along behind her in support of, it never got beaten because they couldn't actually beat it. They had to pull every trick in the book, frankly, to avoid it ever reaching a vote in the end. And frankly, they've only ended up delaying the inevitable. Now, there were problems on the day, shall we say, certainly. To start with, there was only going to be one day of policy, for example. There was only going to be one day where we were going to be able to debate Green Party policy, which was a bit odd, a little bit short. Other spring conferences previously have had more than one day of it. And you get these 3 sessions throughout the day called plenaries, and they get broken up as to cover one thing or another. But plenary 1 ended up full of tech issues. There was all manner of problems that had to be straightened out there. But during that time, when they were trying to get that voting system sorted out, there was an attempt to rule our Zionism is Racism motion out of order right at the beginning of the day. So they were going to try and get it thrown out completely, never reach the point of debate. That fell horribly. And when I say horribly, I mean it was beaten 2 to 3 times over vote-wise. I can't remember what the exact numbers were now. It got absolutely hammered. Following from that, and while the tech issues were still going on, there was another motion that was put forward to try and reprioritize where exactly the Zionism is Racism motion was going to actually come in the order of merit. It was an e-motion, which basically meant it came from a non-organizational source. It came from ordinary members, essentially. And it went through the prioritization process before conference, and it reached E12 at that point. So it was going to be the 12th E-motion to be debated. And there was a motion to try and get it reprioritized and pushed up to E3. And just like the attempts to throw the thing out of order fell by the wayside and was hammered horribly, we won this brilliantly. We absolutely had the numbers. We had them beaten, all goings on. The tech issues carried on, unfortunately. We then had an issue in the second session of the day where the Standing Orders Committee attempted to have a bit of a power grab. Their report had to be passed before any further motions could be debated or any other policies could be debated. Conference couldn't even continue, frankly, unless their report got through. So it was quite important they got it through. But they had this power grab in there, which meant, in theory, they would have been able to block this Zionism is Racism motion from ever coming back if it wasn't successful on the day. And they could do it to any other manner of motions as well. If any amendments that could have gone in on their report, they could have ruled automatically out of order. So it would have been quite the coup for them. But they got spotted and it got ripped out. And sorry.
Well, how when it comes to Green Party, how do you decide what a priority is? Or when something goes up and down in terms of the priority list, like what reasons do you have to give what
It's
examples can you give? You know,
the
for
Standing Orders
example.
Committee makes all those decisions. They have quite a lot of power. There's just 5 of them. They have an awful lot of power between them. I personally think it needs to be expanded beyond 5 people to make these decisions, because even on top of that, they wanted to make sure that any decisions that they made going forwards, broadly speaking, couldn't be interfered with or amended, or they'd be able to rule them out of order if they could. That got prevented. They got basically there was a bit of a hoo-ha for a while where the chair tried to end conference at one point to stop, because nobody would pass this motion, this report. They wouldn't go through. In the end, they stripped out the bits that were contentious and put the rest through, and of course then it passed. So they got caught out for what they were trying to do. It was pretty much 5 or 6 hours before we were able to start voting on anything using the electronic voting platform that we had to use. So finally, by the very last session of the day, we could finally start looking at some policy motions. Now, the third session was set aside for C and E motions. So they were motions that had been brought by organisational bodies within the Green Party, and the E ones, as I said a minute ago, they were non-organisational ones. So the C ones are typically treated as more important. But we had a vote at the start, and it passed, because we had the numbers again, to alternate one C motion with one E motion. So it should have gone CE throughout the rest of that session.
Seems fair, I guess, that way.
It would have brought our motion forward by 1.
Yeah.
Going along that way. And it started out that way. We heard motion C1, and then it went to E1, and then we went to C2 and had a break in the middle of that one because there was an amendment. So the amendment vote was done, and then we waited we had a break, and the rest of it was coming back. But when we came back, they set aside the decision to alternate. And in the end, from that point onwards, we had to hear all the remaining C motions first. There was only 3 more of them, but it wasn't what got voted through, and we never have had we've never had a clear explanation as to why that was.
Right.
So
but whose decision was to change from the alternative from C to E to just straight Cs?
I can only assume it was the SOC.
Okay.
I can only assume it was their decision to do that. I really can't think of anybody else who would have had the power to do that. But we've not had an explanation as to why that happened. So we got onto E2 eventually, and we had about an hour left of the conference at that point, only having that one day. And at that point, a no confidence vote in the chair got called. So that ended up wasting 5 minutes while that was sorted out. Confidence in the chair was voted through. They were restored. We then voted to extend that session by another 15 minutes, which you're able to do under Green Party policy. And of course, because we had the numbers, we won that vote. It got extended by 15 minutes. And then another no confidence vote came in. And again, we went through that same rigmarole of we gained 15 minutes, but then lost 5 minutes of it again. But the moment that no confidence vote fell, they immediately called another one, even though no more business had actually been transacted.
So these are all anonymous. Right.
It was well, obviously I can't comment on who said what. There's a chat window basically because the conference was online, and it went into that, and it was immediate. And because no further business had been transacted, they failed to get that no confidence. So that at that point it got turned away. But by that point, we literally had 5 minutes, 6 minutes left of the session. It was enough time for Lubna Spaitan to basically make a phenomenal and heart-rending speech. And that was where the conference ended up closing on, because it could not be extended any further. And the next day was given over entirely to workshops and training. So it was a one-day mess of attempted policy making with so many problems on one half, but so much gerrymandering and filibustering with the other. But the point I wanted to make most of all here is the fact that that's what they had to do, because we won every single vote throughout the day going forwards. Because I know there's been a lot of conjecture on social media and some articles written that somehow this motion was defeated. They never defeated it. They never beat it, because they couldn't. And they knew they couldn't. And so the only thing they could do was run the clock down.
So I spoke to Lubna because I asked for a comment. She said, like, clearly this was kind of a Zionist stitch up. She's not the only person that said that, by the way. I also read out a thread from Gary Spedding, who kind of documented a lot of stuff. He said it's a bit more nuanced than that. Like he said, kind of bad behavior from both sides, and that part of the reason was because in the particular Zionism is racism motion, it supersedes some of the existing guidelines in regards to anti-Semitism. By the way, I think that's a good thing because I've seen some of the guidelines when it comes to Green Party anti-Semitism. I feel like there was open to interpretation to conflate Israel and Jewish people, by the way. So, but apparently that was part of the contention because there were Jewish Green members who had written the guidance were like, well, that's our work being superseded.
Yeah, there were Jewish members who helped write Lubna Space
Exactly.
write this motion. I would say of Gary Spedding's comment there that this whole point of having a conference and making policy is to change existing policy.
Yeah,
you can't make policy that's only only orbits previous policy. Otherwise, you can never change anything. That, frankly, is a ludicrous argument, and I really don't understand where he's coming from with that. I don't denigrate Jewish people making policy and who have made policy on this issue previously. But when new policy comes along, yes, of course, it can supersede older policy. It's for the current membership to decide whether they like the old policy and want to keep it, or they want to make changes. If they want to make changes, then they're entitled to.
Just to be clear, though, when he said Jewish Greens, as in the group Jewish Greens, not all Jewish Green Party members, because obviously there were Jewish people involved in the Look the Spiten Zionism motion bill, whatever. But from your point of view, I mean, do you think that it was basically pro-Israel people just trying to completely sabotage it? Is that your experience?
There was a small group of very determined people seeking to derail and stop that motion getting heard, essentially. They failed in that respect because Lubna Speitan ended up closing the conference with her speech. They failed in another way because now that the motion got to where it did, the motion gets a multiplier effect to help it get even further up the order of business come the autumn conference. So it will be coming back in the autumn because it hasn't been defeated. And it's going to be coming back possibly in a even stronger position. And
most likely in the past, isn't it?
Well, you can never second guess these things. You just don't know what they might try and do at a live conference. But I'm also of a mind that I'm going to be very happy to go to that conference and look these people straight in the eye and dare them to look me straight in the eye when they try to do what they did here. Because frankly, I'm a big scary bloke for one, but for two, I'm they've exposed themselves really badly during this conference, and we know who they are now. We know the kind of tricks they're prepared to play, and we can build our own game plan around that. But this motion is definitely coming back, and no amount of stirring on social media has gone on. A certain councillor has put a Facebook post out where she apparently said Carla Denyer was going to speak against the motion on behalf of all the MPs and the like of that. It's never. I've found difficulty with that statement that's come out in regards to that, because to believe it or to take the word of it means to take the word of one of these people who wish to run this motion down in the way that they did. And
I can say the councillor
because to take their word for it.
I can say the councillor because we covered it, and also she said it publicly. Is Andre Fries,
Councillor Andre Fries,
who said that Carla, Zach, Rachel Millward were going to back this via Carla. Again, like there's no evidence of this, but also leadership positions don't usually back a particular motion to be impartial. So I thought it was very odd. But then she also called this particular motion anti-Semitic. So I was like, absolute. I didn't even. I wasn't in good faith criticism, right? It was just like, it was anti-Semitic. I was like, whatever.
It's not a serious critique of it.
It's not a serious critique, no.
And with the Green Party, members make policy, not the leadership. As you know, the leader Zach was, as you said earlier on, he was away at that march, and they was involved with that during the day. He wasn't present for the online conference. He didn't have to be, frankly. He wasn't necessary to it because it's simply not how the Green Party works. Members make policy. You can argue, I'm sure some people will argue, well, perhaps he should have been there. Well, what could he have done? He'd have had one vote just like every other member there. That's simply how the party works. It's not the kind of leadership structure where they have to be there, where they necessarily should be there, or he just lets members get on with making policy while he's doing something else. Well, he's leading the Green Party perfectly correctly still, regardless of what he was doing. And of course, him and Carla Denyer both held the Red Line for Gaza banner with Lubna Spaitan on Bournemouth Beach during the autumn conference last year.
Yeah.
So I do find Andre Fries's post nonsensical in so many different ways, but it's got a lot of press and a lot of attention, and really it misses the point completely, and it doesn't adequately cover what actually happened on the day. There was a lot of mess, a lot of problems on the day with technical and other bits and pieces as well. And, you know, the entire block of governance motions that were supposed to be heard, the D motions, they had to be shelved completely. No emergency motions got heard either. Most of the E motions never had a chance. The agenda was so much bigger than could ever have been heard in the 3 sessions that was laid out. And there's certainly questions as to why that needs to be, I think, as why that was the case as well. But the motion didn't get beaten, and that's the message people need to take away from this most of all. It's still live, it's still undefeated, it's still going to come to the next conference, and we're going to be more prepared than ever to make sure this thing passes, because Zionism is racism, no ifs or buts about it, and we're going to take it on and hopefully get it passed next time.
Of course, the Labour Party is a completely different beast to the Greens. We know that, but did that day give you a bit of like, oh, this feels a bit like the Labour Party? It feels like Labour tactics. Is there any sort of truth to that? Do you think the Greens would never descend into what the Labour Party is?
I don't think it's the same thing. I came from Labour as well. Labour meetings, Labour events like that, they could be vicious. I can remember having people screaming in my face that I was an anti-Semite for daring to speak up about Palestinian issues when I was back in the Labour Party. And that's just in a local southwestern, average monthly meeting. They could be absolutely vile. The worst people in the world are some of the people from the Labour right. But in Labour, it's just becoming a complete top-down authoritarian dictatorship. You say the wrong thing, you sneeze the wrong way, you're thrown out the party. That's not coming from the people in the room with you. That's not mischief making from a couple of people who are opposed to your political beliefs over a given thing or not. That's, leadership from on high saying you're the wrong sort of person. We don't want you in this party. If you're not going to jump or say how high every time the leadership says jump, we don't want you here. We want a nice compliant group of empty suits, Keir Starmer drones, if you like, because that's all we want in this party these days. And if you come across a phone with Morgan McSweeney written on the side of it, don't tell anybody. That's basically the defining trait for what is left of this Labour Party, or what was the Labour Party, the lousy rump of a Labour Party that it is now. I don't see the comparison necessarily. I mean, I can understand why some people might. Yeah, it might elicit some memories in that respect, because it feels like the same kind of defeat, I suppose, in a way, if you wanted to put it in those terms, that, okay, we didn't get across the line, we didn't get this motion to where we wanted to be, we didn't get to the big vote, they stopped us from doing that, but that wasn't really a defeat. That was them resorting to the most desperate of tactics to stop the vote ever coming about, because it was a vote they know they were going to lose, because we had the numbers there. And it's the only way they could stop it was to run down the clock by calling votes of no confidence and just stymieing us at every turn they possibly could.
I thought it was a bit disappointing that you had like 400 people there, and it felt like lots of things were being voted on when there's such a small amount of people from the membership. Is that an issue with online conferences? Because, of course, when it comes to the conference later in the year, you're going to have lots of people, thousands of people there.
Yeah, it was roughly 900 people in attendance for the spring conference. And
it was 900.
The membership is, 215,000, I think was the last official count. It's a very small number, isn't it? And I think they could have sold about double the tickets. As it is, we already had technical problems. I do know a little bit about the cause of that. I haven't stated anything publicly about that yet, but watch this space because I'm writing something on it, which may or may not relate slightly to the numbers. But there's a reason for it too, which is both remarkable and ridiculous, I think, at the same time. But anyway, I'll come into this little bit of information I'm still verifying at the moment, and yeah, watch this space on that one, I think, for a minute. But there is a reason why things went a little bit south, and I think that might have something to do with why the numbers were capped at where they were.
Okay.
But I also think that they could have made it bigger if they wanted to. Would that have changed matters in the grand scheme of things, given the small number of relatively small number of people that tried to stop our motion from being heard? Because it was a small group of the same names that were kept coming up. Out of 900 people, it's still a rather small number. But who knows? We can conjecture till the cows come home. At the end of the day, you had only one day for all of this. There was a bit of a puzzlement as to why it had to fall on the same day as that Alliance March.
Yeah.
Because the Greens were involved in the steering group for that, so there was no need for the 2 days to clash at all. It's like they almost prioritized the training and the workshops over the policy making, which just seems a little bit bizarre. But again, a lot of the actions of the SOC came out with and seemed to expose themselves for doing on the day were also a bit bizarre to a lot of people. So yeah, sure, it was a bit of a mess of a day, but it was not the disaster that's being claimed by some, because
of course not.
It wasn't beaten.
Yeah, I mean,
Still
articles are claiming that wasn't the case.
No, it
but
absolutely
also,
wasn't the case.
you know, the Greens went from a small party to a massive one. There's going to be those sort of issues. But thank you for the insight there. Let's go to our comments. I know people have been waiting for that. And bring in our producer, Ben McLean. Ben, how are you?
Hello. I'm not doing too bad. Getting there in terms of like getting over the illness that seems to be like
you are
just
someone who
sweeping
gets
through the
ill for
country.
a long time, don't you?
I do.
It
yeah.
stings and stays with you.
I know, it's really weird. Like, I didn't used to be like this. I used to like just sort of wash everything off, and now
Now you join Turn Left.
Comes with age, mate. Sorry.
I wish it was an age thing, but I think it's more likely a joining Turn Left thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So yes, I have to say we've had people who are Green Party supporters before. We've had Green Party elected representatives before. We've got Callum, who's obsessed with the Green Party, but I don't think we've ever had a Green Party elected representative on the stream who's also glowing green at the same time. I think that is a new level for us.
I mean, it's the party colours. Got to be
We're
done. If
supposed
we're
to
going to
be
glow any
impartial,
colour, it might
but-
as well be green.
We're supposed to be impartial, and then Damien comes on glowing green. We were like, right, that makes us look biased.
Indeed. Absolutely. So hello. Let's go into some of the comments. We'll probably do the donos and stuff first. So Michael gifted 1 Turn Left membership. Thank you very much, Michael. Always good to see you. Lovely to see your comments. And the World's End 66 just became a YouTube member. Welcome aboard. Lovely green profile picture as well there. Catching a
It's
theme
almost
here.
the same hue, isn't it?
Oh my God, I've got a green plant behind me.
And Spexbean Farmer, the lovely Spexbean Farmer, gifted 5 Turn Left memberships. Always good to see you in the chat, Specs. Thank you so much. Antifa Vegan Boy came in and gifted 10 Turn Left memberships. Thank you, Antifa. We appreciate it. Always good to see you fighting a good fight. Love those sunglasses. Let's go on to the comments. Hang on, it's frozen my end. There we go. Cool. We've had technical problems all over the place. Evie Mux has been messing up our end. I can see from the comments that YouTube has been messing up with people's comments. I'm so sorry that that's been happening to you guys. I've seen several of you go, saying about that. It's a bit of a pain when these sorts of things go wrong.
These tech oligarchs censoring you.
Literally, yeah, the tech oligarchs censoring you. I think it could also be not to disparage the conspiracy theory, because I love a good conspiracy theory, a good old George Bush did the moon landings, but
The moon landings were not real. What are you on about?
yeah, but I think it could also be because it's the 1st of April. There's likely updates, and because new financial year, there's likely updates that have just gone through, like Chrome and things like that, that I think are probably causing problems. So. With regards to the first story and Tony Blair, Antifa Vegan Boy said, I think quite correctly, Blairites have an unholy alliance with nonces. Difficult to deny. Yeah. Very difficult to deny.
It is. I mean, we had a show last week with Lewis Aaron, and they went through, how can I say this? Accusations of Blair in the Epstein files. That's all I can say on that one.
Yes. I will just highlight Oliver's comment as well, because I think this is a fair point. Criticism from Blair is an endorsement. If he was positive about the Green Party, I would second guess my membership.
Oh, hell yes.
Yep, I think it's difficult to disagree with those two. Autumn Leaves said, so is Blair going to condemn Sir Keir for welcoming an Al-Qaeda operative to Downing Street? Now, this is a reference to, is it Al-Dalani? I can't remember the name.
Ahmed al-Sharari is now, isn't he?
Is it?
It used to be Abu Muhammad al-Jalani.
Al-Jalani, yes, Al-Qaeda and ISIS cast off, wasn't it?
Al-Nusra Front as well. He's got the triple.
Oh, blimey. Yes,
well,
that is
I mean, he probably also works for the CIA, because they're all the bloody same thing, aren't they?
Quite possibly, or at least worked at some point, at the very least.
Just a freelance job, with them.
He'll be fine, though, because he likes Israel.
Yep.
Yes.
All will be forgiven.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Sort of, it's the kind of same thing that's going on with the Saudis, because, like, as bad as, and don't get me wrong, Iran has a terrible human rights record, but so do Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
like Saudi Arabia have an abysmal human rights record. I mean, in some cases, we're talking like crucifixions in terms of the things that the Saudis have done. And it's just like
beheadings.
Yeah,
but we have obviously an economic relationship when we send arms to them and stuff like that. So of course, human rights go out the window for that, don't they?
Yeah, not to mention what they did in Yemen as well.
Yeah,
like the crimes against the Yemenis committed by the Saudis as well. Like, just wild. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, Damien, did you want to jump in? I realize you didn't get much of a chance there.
Well, as far as the Saudis go, I mean, obviously the most famous issue with them has been the Al-Khashoggi murder, which they've never been held accountable for either. But yeah, it's a vile country, but so many of these Gulf monarchies are. But they're also being shown to be rather fragile right now too, because they were sold this offer of protection by the US, and yet the US has pulled assets out of their states to protect Israel instead, because Israel's more important. And now all these pampered, perfumed princes across the Gulf are realizing just how vulnerable they actually are, with all these US assets and bases getting blown up, their own energy assets potentially in the line of fire. And, who's going to stop, as much as we can criticize Iran for their human rights record, as I made the point with Curtis earlier on, they didn't start this war either. We're on the receiving end of it. They are entitled to defend themselves as any other state in the world is. And they've absolutely shown just how well they can damn well do it too. And who will pay a price for it if the US and Israel don't pack the hell up and piss off home, frankly, because at this point in time, I can see Iran demanding nothing less than the full removal of all US assets from the Gulf, from each of these Gulf states, and as the price for ending this war, because Trump is in no position to end it, and neither is Netanyahu, no matter what they happen to say. So these monarchies are in an awful lot of trouble. I heard a rumor the other day that the Bahraini monarchy had fled, though I don't think that's actually quite true, but it just goes to show how quickly stories like that can spread, and just how vulnerable some of them clearly are. I mean, the Bahraini ones, I mean, you might correct me here, Ben, which way around. I believe they're a Sunni family, but the majority of people in Bahrain are Shia, which is the same as Iran. and there's a little bit of a vulnerability, should we say, with that. But I think Kuwait might be in a similar boat. It could be just because they're smaller states as well, but they're in a lot of trouble actually, and they're getting a bit of a comeuppance, I would suggest, to a greater or lesser extent as a result of this war.
I was actually thinking that, about what Donald Trump, in one of his sort of hazed, likely dementia-riddled statements the other day, claimed that Mohammed bin Salman had to kiss his ass, and like I wonder if that might play a part one day in dislodging the Saudi monarchy, because if there's one thing that dictators cannot afford, it's to look weak. And I think that there's a full possibility that could come back to bite him on the arse in the long term. But like, shouldn't have sided with a genocide state and the funders of a genocide state, should you dickhead?
Didn't bin Salman release footage of that crashed AWAC as a result of that?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he put out footage of the crashed AWAC after Trump said that. So, touche.
Yes, because they checked. Sorry, go.
So I was going to say that there was also rumors that Iran were gonna go after Palantir and all these big tech companies. And I have to say, I completely support that decision. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in the world
if you're going to pick your villains, there's Iran's here, but Palantir.
Oh my god! Everyone knows that Palantir and that are the worst. I mean, if you're going to go after tech oligarchs, I mean, our tagline is "Destroy the oligarchs," right? So critical support, I suppose.
Especially if those oligarchs are going to get involved in genocide and say that their purpose is, killing Marxists and Muslims in the Middle East as one of the former founders.
Meta are part of something called Project Memphis, which is directly involved in basically the genocide in Gaza. So thanks, Mr. Zuckerberg, to that.
Yes, yeah. Even worse, they're involved in the metaverse, which is like I think a bigger crime against humanity. Fucking ridiculous shit.
We've got some big trolls, right? Have you seen it's the latest member of Turn Left, and I know who that is.
Oh, hang on. Incredible. Curtis Daly's pen.
Remarkably a similar pen in the image.
I love it.
This right is going to be in every single show now. So you're going to give a dono every single show will redrive. I know that's you, Michael, because I saw you comment on the pen in the show. That's you. What we don't know though is who the hell is Len McBain. I tell you what, tweet us on the hashtag who was Len McBain.
I still don't know.
You still don't know?
Yeah, so like Curtis was convinced it was me. So like he was like, "Oh, I thought you were joking," when I denied it, and I was like, "No, I'd send a voice note in our group chat being like, no, listen to me, it's not me. Yeah, it's genuinely not me." And Deus Ex also became a member. Sorry, just sidetracked a little bit there. And where were we with the comments? I'm worried I'm going to lose my place now. Yes, thank you, Deus Ex. And where were we? Christian from endorsement.
We got railroaded. We got sidetracked, didn't we?
We did. So the right want to conflate extreme Islamic rhetoric with every Muslim as if all Muslims are a monolith. I think we see this fairly consistently. I mean, look at the treatment of Moth and Ali. Like,
precisely.
Yeah, actually a sort of, relative. I don't know if Mothan's a pacifist, but he's a gardener, for fuck's sake. His interests are,
he's got his own YouTube channel doing gardening.
Yeah.
I've seen him give welly to an apple tree before.
Yeah. And moving on to the Ben Gavir story, which I did want to talk a little bit about. Michael said monster is such an apt word. Absolutely is. And Graham pointed out, I believe Damien said as well, they were wearing those lapel pins of the nooses, after particularly horrific. But I just want to underline just So the nooses are obviously they're pins that you wear on your lapel, but also they are of symbols that are typically associated with capital punishment and lynching, right? They're a lynch pin. Like, Ben Gvir is making a joke that can only be understood in English, at least as far as I know, about Otzma Yehudit, his party, and how much control they have over the coalition that they have with Likud, because a lot of people in Likud were sort of like, not to say that Likud are like tentative about, performative cruelty, because they're not. They're happy to butcher Palestinians, but yeah, the Otzma Yehudit are a different level, and they're describing themselves as the linchpin, the foundation without which the system can't operate. They're making a joke in that statement as well, and the fact that joke is a joke in English is, it's telling. Also, somebody did say in the chat, Graham said in the chat, isn't the party's name translation Jewish Power Party or something? Yes, Otzma Yehudit translates to Jewish Power, and of course the leaders of the genocide in Rwanda, the associated party was called Hutu Power, and it was the Hutus who were committing genocide against the Tutsis. That's really quite telling, I think. Did you guys want to jump in on the linchpins at all?
I didn't know that, Ben. You're a mine of useless information, I would argue. But no, that's a handy. I hadn't put that together at all. But yes, it does actually make sense. I just took them on face value for what they were. It's an absolutely disgusting symbol. But it's, hey, look at us. This is what we're into. We want to see people hang. Look at our lovely big hanging room. Look at the big noose at the top there. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it lovely? Let's sweet some champagne while we flash off our little lapel pins. They're a sick, twisted bunch. They're monster. I mean, we call these people monsters. It's not a strong enough bloody word.
I agree. It's not a strong enough word, is it? Monster.
I don't know what you call these people. They're a depth of depravity. It's beyond language.
The pin, though, it's remarkably similar to the Release the Hostages pin. So lots of people were wearing that. It's the yellow ribbon, right? So what they've done is from far away, you think it's the solidarity pin with Jewish people, or Release the Hostages pin. And then it's actually a noose. Interesting what you said there, though, that all of this is in English. Now, when you go on Twitter and an Israeli politician says something dog whistly, but not so open and honest about their beliefs. But when they say something in Hebrew, you translate it and it's literally like a Nazi talking. One, I haven't confirmed this, but I did see someone say it looks like that the Hebrew translation has stopped working for a bit. But also, it just shows that they were almost hiding behind a language barrier in their real intentions, and now they're happily saying all of this in English, and it probably means they're saying much, much worse in Hebrew.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the joke is. I can do this. Yeah, to be clear, the joke is in English. The joke makes sense in English. Of course, they're speaking Hebrew in the when they're talking about it.
Sure.
Because they're, it's like you can do the dog whistle as a sort of like English joke, but you couldn't make a statement about it in English defending this law, and so few of them have. Like most of this stuff has been done in Hebrew, and that's I think there's a reason for that. I did want to highlight another comment, which was about like centrists sort of like not taking strong enough action on this sort of thing. PB Lou said Democrats in America dropped abolishing the death penalty from their platform when Kamala ran, and that helped them lose. I think, it's a pattern we saw again and again. Do we need to go into sort of like the Democrats and Labour's reaction to this bill? Because Curtis, you did touch on it, didn't you?
Yeah. Here's what I do want to say about the Democrats. So obviously the Democrats are fully Zionist, we know that. Gavin Newsom for a period tried to sound like he was critical of Israel because he and many mainstream Democrats understand how hated Israel is, how hated AIPAC is. So they started to slam AIPAC, and now they're taking money from an organization called J Street, which is just a liberal Zionist pack. So obviously they're not quite as genocidal as AIPAC, but ultimately they still defend the state of Israel. But Gavin Newsom went on a podcast recently and said, "Oh yeah, don't worry, I'm still very much Zionist." And it's very interesting that Tucker Carlson, for example, says something objectively correct when it comes to Israel, not for the right reasons. We know his wider politics. I saw a recent interview with him with a so-called professor, I think he's like a fake professor, talking about white genocide, right? This guy isn't based or anything. But as long as liberals, whether it's the Labour Party, whether it's Democrats, reject even just standing up for basic human rights and international law, I think you're pushing people into far more radical politics. You're pushing people into the far right because people are going to see, oh, that Tucker Carlson seems all right because he's saying the truth on what Israel is doing. And then in the same podcast, they'll say stuff like, white people are being replaced. And I think liberals and centrists are actively pushing that kind of politics because they refuse to just engage with what most people think when it comes to Israel, which is that most people might not be anti-Zionist. They might not even know what it means, but most people absolutely are appalled at what Israel is doing. They are not popular. And when liberals fail to do that, they're pushing them in the arms of the right. Of course, they can come into the left too, of course. But in the American context, Tucker Carlson is very famous. You know, I think he's bigger than Hassan Piker. You're more likely to find his content than Hassan Piker and fall down the rabbit hole. And that's when you're seeing like Yvette Cooper say really shitty milquetoast stuff like, oh yeah, this particular bill's kind of bad. Which, Damien, you point out, this was before it got passed, and since it got passed, absolutely nothing. We heard full condemnation about ambulances, which I want to stress, no one was hurt or killed in that. It was ambulances that got blown up or set alight. And we had full condemnation for the political establishment. But a racist bill gets passed in which Palestinians are not just killed, but hung, because it's all about performative cruelty. Absolutely nothing.
Nah, but you see, those ambulances, they were clearly set on fire by an Iranian group that's only existed since the 9th of March. So of course
that refers to occupied territories as the land of Israel.
Yeah, I mean, it was an opportunity to bash Iran as much as anything else, those ambulances. Of course, they were being torched in a synagogue car park as they were. I mean, there can be little doubt it was an anti-Semitic attack, but let's not try and make this about the Iran war, for fuck's sake. I mean, that was ridiculous from the get-go. Of course, Iran have got nothing better to do than come to Golders Green and torch a few ambulances. I'm sure they've got a bit of spare time for that, with amongst all their other bombing and, preparing for boots on the ground on Carg Island or whatever else right now. But...
they've never started a war in 200 years, so why would they suddenly...
now? They're all British?
Yeah, I mean, and we still don't know what's going on with the two people, but Iran hasn't started a war in 200 years, yet they're going to, have a random attack against ambulances in Britain. Of course, that makes absolutely no sense.
No, but we're expected to believe it, because they promote it. Nigel Farage took to camera, he said, I know all about this group, whatever they were called, HAYI, or... I can't remember what it stands for, because what's the point? They don't really exist, I don't think. But even he cited several other attacks across Europe, and they've all been debunked as being something else entirely. This group may not exist at all, except on paper. And yet we were supposed to believe this, that they were clearly the ones at fault, that there's clearly some sort of fifth column enacting its nefarious ideals on British soil, and that's what these ambulances were clearly all about. Well, no. It wasn't. It was just an anti-Semitic arson attack, but it was just that. So stop making more out of it than it needs to be. Treat it for the crime it actually is. But that seems to be an alien concept in this day and age, with Palestine Action supporters getting arrested once again. And the law only applies to certain people in certain ways.
Yeah, duality of law. Did want to bring attention to a couple of bits. So, excuse me, not really Rachel Atwood said LOSE I don't understand.
It's got music symbols next to it.
Yeah, so it must
So
be
I don't know
it must be singing of some kind, and I don't know.
Cryptic, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've seen messages like that on TikTok. Don't read them backwards.
REC.
Oh, hang on.
It'll be something dirty.
Oh wait, I did get it. It took me a couple of seconds. It's loser. It's LOSER. And I fell for it. Line and sinker. Like
I wouldn't have known until you said it.
God damn it. Yeah, that's because it was aimed at us. That's we're the losers.
Absolutely.
Right. So let me just. There was a comment I wanted to bring up as well. They're discussing who Len McBain is because no one can work it out. And he's got like a picture with like big muscles, and I haven't looked at it properly. But their sex's response made me laugh. It said, "It could be Ben. I think roids can make you sick," which I thought was pretty good.
I mean, are you going to admit it? It was it you?
See, I'd love to admit it, but it's not me. Like, this is the thing. I did want to, on a slightly serious note as well, I just remembered, I didn't mark much for the discussion because it's all sort of very procedural based and everything. But with regards to the motion, I did want to highlight Becca's comment because I know that Becca, if I remember correctly, is Jewish herself. And I wanted to see what Becca thought of it because she said, I read the motion earlier and the counter argument, I'm still mulling it over. And she went on to say 95% of the motion I agree with. The rest I have some questions about how this would work out in practice. Yes, it's clear several Jewish groups fully support the motion. And several sections have already been removed. I presume sections that people would find.
Sections were ruled out of order. There were bits and pieces that were ruled out of order on the way through that procedure. So that wasn't part of the final motion that ended up being taken.
What was ruled out of order then?
Oh, I'm trying to think what else was in it at the time. I'm not sure I can actually say because it's all part of the internal doings. But there were a couple of bits that they just said were out of order. Just the way certain things were defined. It wasn't anything material, but it was just the way certain things were phrased. Didn't sound right. Was ruled out of order. Didn't really cause any conjecture or argument over the sake of it. Not massively, but yes, there were several sections that were pulled before the final draft, so to speak.
Nice. Yeah, I thought it was just worth pulling that up. If, of course, Becca's Jewish, and of course this directly affects Jewish people. It also directly affects Palestinians, and if I knew anyone in the chat was Palestinian, I would also have highlighted their comment and brought that up. But I'm not aware of any people who are Palestinians within our chat. If next time, if they want to sort of make themselves known, more than happy to bring up their comments. But other than that, I'm going to hand back to you guys and let you finish up the show, if that's all good with you two.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben, for producing wonderful stuff. Of course, thank you to everyone who tuned in. And Damien, thank you for joining me tonight.
Always a pleasure, mate. Always happy to come on here and glow to myself to one side of you.
Well, next time you might have a practical background and you might have this green halo around you.
I know. You'll see me in all my bold glory. Without the fuzzy radioactive haze. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Again, thank you to all our viewers and all of you who donated to our show. We will be back on Friday for another edition of Normal Islands Live. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'll see you next time.